Hey Spuddies, PotatoMcWhiskey here, and welcome to Let's Play Civilization 6 in the over-explained, over-analyzed, in excruciating detail Let's Play. That's right, we're going to be playing the game and we're going to be going into every single little decision and thought process to the extent that I can. I might forget a few things, but I'll do my best to really explain what's going on when I'm playing the game, starting right when I create the game. So let's get started. Oh, by the way, I am using a mod and it should be available to anyone on Steam. I don't know about console and stuff like that, but it is here somewhere, and it is called the Sucretax Simple UI Adjustments. It just makes some very small little changes to the UI that I really like, and I recommend it to everyone. There will be a link to the mod in the description of the video, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. The very first thing we have to do is create a game, of course. So we're going to go into Advanced Setup, and we're going to be playing on a continents map because that's the default, and I want as many people to be able to understand what's happening. And we're also going to be playing as Saladin today. And the reason why I'm playing as Saladin is quite simple, because I tried to record this before and I rolled Saladin randomly, and then the game crashed and failed on me, so I had to start over. We're also going to be playing on deity difficulty with the apocalypse mode added. This guide is intended for people playing on the full version of the game, i.e. all of the expansions, all of the DLC, all of the updates, and basically zero gameplay mods. And that's the game setup. We're playing on deity, continents, everything standard. With apocalypse mode, let's start the game. Let's talk about Arabia's bonuses. First thing I'll do is I'll just jump into the game and then I'll start talking about Arabia's bonuses. Now, we have a few bonuses, and I kind of want to read through them first and then talk about how they're going to interact with each other. So we have righteousness of faith, the worship building for their religion. The worship building refers to the building that you unlock by getting a religion. That's stuff like the synagogue, stuff like the pagoda, I think it's called, the stupa, all those sorts of things are the buildings that you unlock with your religion. And they cost 1/10 of the usual faith cost, i.e. if they cost 500 faith, Arabia can buy them for 50. Not only that, but that worship building for Arabia gives you an extra 10% science, faith, and culture in the city that you build it in. We also have the last profit, which means we automatically receive a final great profit when the next to last one is claimed. That means if there's 4 available in the game, once the third one is claimed, we will get one for free. We also get +1 science for each foreign city following Arabia's religion. We also get the Mamluk, which is a unique medieval era unit that replaces the knight. It basically heals it at the end of every turn. Otherwise, it's indistinguishable from a knight, aside from being a unique unit that heals. And we also get the Madrasa. This is a unique university that has +1 extra science to its yield, and also gives you faith equal to the adjacency bonus of the campus district that the university is built into. So let's talk about how all these bonuses sort of interweave together to sort of project a way that we might want to play Arabia in this game. So the first one that I want to talk about is getting the free great profit. Now, this bonus actually, the free great profit and the +1 science for each foreign city following Arabia's religion, these interact in a very interesting way, in that if we go for an early religion and spread it early, we will make up for the science impact of not building early campuses and instead going for holy sites by spreading our religion using faith. But if we opt to go for science first, we're not punished by missing out on a religion because we get the great profit for free. So this is actually a sort of all-in-one package of a thing that basically says to you, you're getting a religion this game, and whether you go for it early or late, you're not going to be punished too hard for it. So this is like a thing that is just a huge bonus for Arabia if you want to do a science game supported by a religion. A lot of people mistakenly think that Arabia is a civilization that wants to go for a science victory. That is somewhat true, but I think they're far better off for a science victory because 3 of their bonuses give them science, and another 3 of them give them faith. So that kind of points me in the direction of going for a science victory supported by a religion. So that's kind of like the complex web of things. So how do I describe this? Basically, this bonus, righteousness of the faith, tells us that we want to get holy sites. And the reason we want to get holy sites is because we want to get that tier 3 building that'll give us 10% science, faith, and culture. And the last prophet says to us that we can get holy sites basically whenever we feel like it. Like, we're not pressured to get holy sites early as Arabia, which means you can actually play Arabia as a religion civ or as a science civ. You can do either or. I would personally argue that due to the madrasa, you're probably pointing more in the direction of a science civ rather than a faith civ, but you can do both. And that's kind of where my current sort of bias going into this game before I ever look at the map is that I'm probably going to want to do a science game supported by a strong religion. And that's the plan, right? That is the plan for this game. Now, the Mamluk offers us an interesting choice in that we can, if we want to, go for a relatively early war with stirrups. We are going to want to pick up irrigation and bronze working. Astrology to get our holy sites, and bronze working to get our iron before we go for stirrups, but we can go for an early Mamluk push if we so choose. It's a fairly late one, actually. It comes in medieval, but I would say this is like an early mid-game push with Mamluks if that's the direction that we want to go. Now, we also want to talk about our starting location, and this is a interesting starting location for a number of reasons. The first one is that we're on grassland tiles with lots of improvables, but most importantly here, we're starting on a grassland tile that has access in its first ring to multiple tiles with 4 yields. So this is a concept I want to talk about for a second here. Normally, any tile in the game gives you 3 resources, okay? Or sorry, 2 resources. It'll be, plains will give you 1 food, 1 production. Grassland will give you 2 food. And then there's like weaker versions of that terrain, like tundra that gives you 1 food. And then snow that gives you 0 food. And desert that gives you 0 food. So in general, the sort of minimum value that you're going to get from a tile, that you want to get from a tile, is 2. And because a citizen, 1 population of your city, takes 2 resources, 2 food to maintain, any resource above 2 is profit. That is, i.e., if I work this tile, how much surplus am I generating? If I work this 2 food tile, I'm generating a surplus of 0 because it costs me 2 food to put a citizen on. It costs me 2 food per turn to put a citizen on that tile, and I'm getting 2 food out. So the net production there is 0. If I have a tile with 2 food, 1 production, I have a net output of 1 because I'm putting 2 food into this tile, I'm getting 2 food out, which cancels out, and I'm getting a profit of 1 production. So in actual fact, what this means is that a 2 food, 2 production tile isn't like 25 or 33% better than this one. It's twice as good because you're getting double the profit. So when you're looking to settle your very first city, there's a lot of things you're looking for. The first one is fresh water. You want to press the 4 key on your keypad or come down here to the lenses screen and click on settler, and the bright sort of saturated green tiles are going to be where there's fresh water. Now, fresh water is a mechanic whereby I can actually look it up here in the water page here. The presence of a water source will immediately set the initial housing level of a city. A city not adjacent to any water will have a maximum population of 2. A city on the coast will have a max population of 3. And a city adjacent to a river, lake, or oasis will have a max population of 5. So that's what these means. These sort of deeply unsaturated grey tiles, that means the city will have 2 population. If it's one of these coastal tiles, it'll have 3 population. And if it's one of these bright green saturated tiles, it will have 5 population room. 5 housing. So that's the first thing you want to look for. Where is my housing? Where do I want to settle to get good housing? And right now, for me, I want to settle somewhere on this river, right? There's some really, really good housing all along this river. And then the second thing you want to look for is what tile do I want to settle on? So let's talk about some tiles that I would want to settle on. I would want to put my city down on this silk. And the reason why I want to put my city down on the silk is because when you settle on a resource, you extract that resource into your resource pool, and then you can sell it to other players, which is a really damn good benefit. Not only that, but any bonus yields that tile produces, right now it would be +1 culture, you actually get that in your city center forever for the rest of the game, and that could be a really huge boost in the early game, particularly if it's a tile that isn't normally easily worked. So for example, something like incense on plains, it's not usually great to actually work it, but if you settle it, you get that +1 faith per turn in your city, and that can mean an earlier pantheon without actually having to work a suboptimal tile. But the main thing I would say is if you're a new player, you want to look for somewhere that you can settle that has good yields adjacent to the city center. So for example, if I settle in place, I will have adjacent to my city center, 1 tile with 0 profit, 3 tiles with 1 profit, and 2 tiles with 2 profit. And so I would give these a score of like 1, right? A score of 1. And then these I would give like a score of 4, right? Because these are just way better. They're so much better to work a 2 food, 2 production tile compared to a 2 food tile or a 2 food, 1 production tile. Like so far and away, so much better. It's ridiculous. So really what I would want to be looking for is where can I settle to work the maximum number of yields if I could, like, the potential to place my settler anywhere. So I'm thinking where I would settle is right here on this grassland tile, and it's for a number of reasons. It has 3 tiles adjacent to it. It has a really crappy water tile, but this can be really good later on in the game. We'll talk about that. It has a crappy water tile, but that's not a worry because that will just be a harbor at some point, right? If I so choose. Settling here will give me not only fresh water, it'll also give me coastal access if I want it, which means I can get era score from a galley or a trireme or something. It'll give me 3 tiles with 4 yield that are adjacent to the city, which means my first 3 population will be able to work 4 yield tiles easily without any problems. And then it has a further bunch of tiles just slightly further out, the stone here and the hill here, that also have 4 yield. Not only that, but this is a hill that has woods, which means if I settle on this, I get rid of the woods and I get rid of the hill. And the reason I get rid of the hill, quote unquote, is because when you settle a city center, the city center produces 2 food, 1 production. And you can see here, that's what these hills produce. A plains hill is slightly different in that if you settle on a plains hill, you'll actually produce 2 food, 2 production in your capital. But that's kind of like a little bit more of an advanced thing that we'll talk about a little bit later when we're settling more cities. But if you settle on a grassland hill, you're basically wasting it. So I want to actually go find a crappy flatland tile to settle on to get rid of. I'm going to go settle in place because this will also give me an extra chop that I can chop that woods later for even more benefit. So we'll settle right here on this tile. The other reason why I want to settle here is because I have an active volcano to my south and there's a reef here. And I can very easily get a +3 adjacency campus right here. Excuse me. I very easily get a +3 campus right here by settling on this tile, thanks to the reef. If you don't know, let's go ahead into the campus district right here. You scroll down here, and it has a bunch of adjacency bonuses, but more importantly, you can see it gets +2 science adjacency from each adjacent reef. And then if I later on, I decide to go for a harbor, which you generally want to do in a coastal city, you'll want to get a harbor, because they provide you with a lot of gold, potentially a lot of production, and they improve the coastal tiles, which will make up a significant portion of the tiles that a harbor city will work. And then the city center plus the harbor in adjacency with the reef will give this +3 science adjacency on my campus, right? Because every district gets +1 adjacency from every 2 adjacent districts. And the city center counts as a district, the harbor counts as a district. So this could potentially be a very good harbor for me, or a very good campus for me. And the reason you want to get at least +3 adjacency on your campuses is not only because we're playing Arabia and the madrasa, which is our unique university building. If I go in here and I look at the madrasa, our unique university building gets bonus faith equal to the adjacency of science in the district, which means when I build my university, I'll be getting +3 faith per turn from the university. But the other main reason is if I come over here to rationalism, I believe it's over here at enlightenment, here it is. Rationalism gives you a 50% bonus to the science yield from buildings inside your campus if the district has at least +3 adjacency. And so since I know that I can guarantee a +3 adjacency in this campus, I know I'm going to get at least a 50% boost if I plug that card in. And this card is extremely important for maximizing the amount of science that you get from your buildings. You also get a 50% bonus if the population of the city is 10 or higher. This is a pretty high housing and a pretty high food area, so we should be able to reach the +10 population at some point in this game, no problem. So without further ado, with all of that explained, let's go ahead and settle our city. That gives us the knowledge of sailing. That's also important because we settled on the coastline, we get the boost for sailing. Found a city on the coast, that is the boost. So we just actually got a little bit of science for free. I also want to talk about this harbor. This harbor gets a bonus adjacency. If I come in here to the harbor, I'll be able to show you guys this pretty easily. You can see here, it gets +2 gold adjacency for being adjacent to the city center, and it gets 1 adjacency for coastal resources and 1 adjacency for every 2 adjacent districts. So this is also actually a +3 adjacency harbor. And that's really, really important because the harbor building, the shipyard, gives you production based on the adjacency of the district. It says right there, it'll say it just over the banking tile, it says bonus production equal to the adjacency gold bonus of this district. So that means that this harbor and this campus working together are giving me science and production, which is really great. So we're this is the current like long-term plan of this city, is to get a good campus and get a good harbor. Now, the other interesting thing about the harbor is if we build this relatively early, this opens up some options for us. In particular, it gives us the ability to build the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus. The Mausoleum of Halicarnassus is really useful for a number of reasons. First of all, it's a wonder that the AI typically doesn't really go for, but it also gives us science, faith, and culture, which are all things that we want to be getting as Arabia, because Arabia is a civilization that can boost all of these yields with our tier 4, our tier 3 worship buildings coming from our religion. And the nice thing is right here that if we go back into the mausoleum and right click it and we look at the placement requirements, it just needs to be built adjacent to a harbor district. That's it. It's 400 production and it'll make all of these coastal tiles really, really nice, as well as give us a boost for our great engineers if we go for any great engineers this game. So that would be me sort of thinking long term ahead. I would place down this pin right here. I can never find them in the list. There it is, the mausoleum. So this would be kind of like, I would maybe go for the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus this game because it gives us a lot of yields and it makes these coastal tiles much more attractive for me to work. It's not the greatest harbor in the world, but I would say a +3 adjacency harbor is pretty okay. +4 is good, +5 is really good, and +6 is ridiculously good. My personal opinion, a harbor that has 3 adjacency is like the most baseline harbor you should ever go for. Okay, so I've done a lot of talking about like long-term planning, but let's talk about cities, right? We have to actually talk about what our cities are doing. I've been talking about sort of like more advanced concepts that some players might not even understand what's going on here, but hopefully you'll start to piece together what's going through my head as I'm like planning and learning what I want to do in a game. Cities have a resource called food, okay? And how food works is if you click on this button here, toggle city details, and at the top here will be a section called citizen growth that will give you all of the information that you need in order to make decisions about how to grow your city, okay? We are getting +4 food per turn. The city has 1 population. Now, technically speaking, I'm going to actually make a bit of a weird thing here. The city actually has 2 population because the tile underneath the capital has always worked, but this citizen doesn't cost you any food. Okay, just keep that in your head. So the city has 1 population that's currently working a 2 food, 2 production tile. So that means we are getting a surplus of 2 food per turn because we're producing 4 food, 2 from the city center, 2 from the tile we're working, and we are eating 2 of it. So we end up with 2 that gets multiplied by our amenities. That gets multiplied by our amenities growth bonus, which is based on the number of amenities you have. If I go up to the thingy here and I type in amenity sources. Sorry, it's happiness that you want to look for. Happiness is a measure of the contentment of your people. The important information here is 1 amenity is required for each 2 populations, starting at a population of 3. A content city, i.e. a city with 0 positive amenities, will have no bonuses. A happy city, which is +1 amenities, I believe, will have a 10% growth bonus, that's this right here, as well as a 5% yield increase. If I hover over my culture here, you'll see down the bottom, it'll say +5% from amenities. An ecstatic city will have a 20% growth bonus and a 10% yield bonus, and having negative amenities will have negative effects on your growth and your resource production. Okay, so if we look at this, right, we're producing 2 food per turn, it gets multiplied by 10%, that goes to 2.2, which means our total surplus is 2.2 because we have enough housing for our city. We're not getting any negative penalties, and we have full loyalty, so we're not getting any negative penalties there. So we're going to be growing in 7 turns. And how you get that 7 turns is you take this food needed to grow population and divide it by the surplus down here. So 15 divided by 2.2 is about 7 turns to grow. If I were to just go ahead and work a 1 food tile real quick, you can see that our food surplus is now halved, right? We're now making 3 food minus 2, which means we're getting plus 1 food, multiplied by 10% plus 1.1, which means it's now taking us 14 turns to grow, right? We have doubled the amount of time it takes for this city to grow. So it's important to remember that the thing that matters isn't the total amount of food that you're making in a city. It is the food surplus compared to the modifiers like housing, amenities, and all that other stuff, and whether or not you can actually support that population. Okay, so that's kind of like the first little thing. The second thing I'm going to talk about is production. Production is the lifeblood of your empire. Now, why is this tile so important? Well, let's dework it and let's work this 1 production tile. If we look down here, that is 4.2 production in a city. That is 20% less compared to working this, okay? So remember when I talked about how the surplus is what matters? Working this tile, like let's say I work a 0 production tile, okay? That is 3 production. If I work this 1 production tile, 3 plus 1, that's a 33% increase, right? That's a 1/3 increase. But if I work the 2 production tile, that is a 2/3 increase, okay? So that's where the idea of this tile with its 2 food, 2 production is worth twice as much as this tile with its 2 food, 1 production comes from. Because the relative value of that to not working either tiles means that this tile is worth twice as much as this tile. So that's why I'm going to work that one, because this is just a huge amount of production to get this early into the game. These very low production numbers are going to be standard. I think the most I've ever seen in a city is where I was working like my capital was settled on a tile that had 2 food, 2 production. And I was working a tile with 2 food, 3 production. And I think that was like a total of like 7 or 8 production on turn 1, which is insane, right? If you can get 5 production in your capital on turn 1, you're doing really, really well. If you're getting 4, that's like the most basic standard. And if you can get 6, you're doing amazingly well. Okay, so that's what you want to look for. Now, it's really, really important that you always, the very first citizen in your city is always working at least a 2 food production tile, because growth is so important in the early game, because you cannot build settlers until you get to 2 population. That's right. We're going to be talking about what the cities can actually build. And just to give you an idea of how important this extra 1 production is, if I look at this monument, it's going to take 12 turns. And if I look at the settler or the builder, for example, that'll take 10. If I come in here and I swap to the 1 production tile, you can see here, the monument's going to take 15 turns. That's an extra 3 turns it takes for me to build this. And a lot happens in every single turn in the game. You move units, you get yields, you get bonuses, everything happens every turn, right? And the builder will take an extra 2 turns. And then let's imagine I had an even worse start where none of my tiles had production. This would take 20 turns, okay? So actually, working this tile right here shaves 8 turns off of building a monument for me, which is massive, like insanely huge amounts of production here. These early game decisions are really what make or break your game. That's why I'm spending so much time talking about them, because these little adjustments are massive. Okay, so let's talk about the very first thing that we want to build in a game. Now, there's some advanced strategies where you go for an early monument. And the reason why you would want to go for an early monument is so that you can power through your culture tree, because how you advance through this culture tree, the civics tree rather, I call it the culture tree, just like this is the technology tree and I call it the science tree, right? Because this is researched by science, this is researched by culture. And the reason why you would want to get an early monument is because you want to build the Wonder Apadana. That would be my main thing. Or if you want to get an early government plaza or something like that, right? There's a few reasons you might want to go for monument first, but I would generally shy away from monument first. You want to get a monument early because they're really, really valuable. They give you +2 culture in total. You can see here it says provides +1 loyalty per turn to this city. If the city has already maximum loyalty, it also provides +1 additional culture. So that's 2 culture from the monument. So yeah, I would generally shy away from getting the early monument, even if it is really, really powerful. There are situations you want to go for it, whereas if you know you're not going to be settling a bunch of cities and you want to get to colonization really, really early, you can just go straight monument. But I would say this is generally a pretty weak one, especially when you're playing on higher difficulties, because it leaves you too open to early aggression. And generally what I would recommend is getting at least 1 scout, maybe 2. So the reason you want to go for a scout is, it's actually a kind of a complex way to describe things, but basically out on the map, there are a bunch of things that if I discover them first, I get benefits. So for example, if I find a tribal village first, I get the opportunity to capture that tribal village. Maybe I'll get a builder, right? So I could spend 6 turns of production, 30 production on a thing called a scout, and potentially get a 50 production unit in return, which means I'm profiting 20 production. So the potential return on a scout is really, really high, which is why you want to get 1 or 2 of them to go explore the map. And there's a couple of other reasons you want to go for scouts as well, right? Having knowledge of the map lets you plan where you're going to be settling your cities. It lets you know, oh, how close am I to my enemies? Do I need to build an army? Do I need to defend myself? Can I be greedy? Do I need to build an army? Can I skip an army? Where do I have really good cities? Do I have a natural wonder nearby that I can settle to get huge benefits? There's all these reasons you want to go for a scout. Now, there are builds where you go for the early monument, but they're pretty niche, and there are builds where you go for the early builder, typically as civilizations like the Maya, who really need to get those early farms online. And there's also situations where you want to go for military units at the start of the game. Typically, that's going to be for people like the Aztecs and Sumeria, who start off with a unique unit, who can do a lot of really cool stuff in the early game that scouts would otherwise do for you. And that's it. That's all of the decision making that I typically go through in the very first turn of the game. Now, it took me 28 minutes to get to this point, but that's fine, right? It's okay to take your time in the early game, because the decisions we make now will have effect for the next 200 to 300 turns, right? They're going to have consequences down the line. If I built this scout 2 turns slower, that means the next thing that I build is 2 turns slower, which means it comes in slower, right? So you have to kind of really think about your decisions early game. Now, the only thing left to do is to hit end turn. Although there's also a couple of things that I want to talk about real quick, actually, before I end the turn. We are at the top of the screen. Also, if you want to rotate your map, hold down your Alt key, left click, and then rotate the mouse left and right, and it will rotate your map. Sometimes what will happen is you'll actually spawn in this position. It'll look, let me see if I can get it to work. It'll look like this, right? You'll see tundra below you, or you'll be not sure where exactly you are on the map. What you do is you just hold down Alt, left click, and rotate your camera until the top right hand or the top left hand corner is looking directly sort of south of you, and you'll be able to see the map edge border and be like, okay, I'm in the south of the map. I'm actually in the north of the map, so just like reverse that logic. It's much easier to see the north of the map, but let's say you're like, oh, I can't see below me. I just rotate the camera and I can see much further into the fog of war, and if the edge of the map is there, then I would know I'm at the edge of the map, right? So that's a cute little tip that lets you sort of plan where you are on the map. And that piece of information is actually really important, because I know for a fact that tundra is going to be to my north. So I'm going to want to push south in order to grab better terrain, because tundra is kind of weak. So if I'm going to want to settle early, it's probably going to be laterally or to the south, because those are the directions in which good land is more likely to be. Here's a little tip that I put it into a video before, but I want you to go into your key bindings, and I want you to bind this next action key to something that you rest your finger on. I put it on Z because my little pinky finger is always resting on Z. Or my ring finger is, rather. And that means rather than having to bring my mouse all the way down here to the next turn button, I can just tap Z and it ends the turn for me. All right, let's talk about scouting with our warrior. Generally speaking, you want to just do a little bit of early scouting. You want to kind of reveal in like a little bit of a semicircle. And what you're looking for with your warrior are barbarian encampments, as well as potential city locations, and potentially just generally information. You're looking for other players. You're looking for all that sort of stuff. And you want to kind of scout in the terrain of least resistance, i.e. terrain that is flat, or up onto hills near terrain that's flat, because your units can see further when they're on a hill. I'll show you that in a second. You can see here, because I'm standing on this hill, I can see over all of these hills. If I come down off that hill, all of these hills and forests now act like vision blockers. I can't actually see up into here. I'm going to move out across this open terrain, because warriors move a little bit easier over open terrain. Here's a tribal village. This is an important thing in the game. Also, something I haven't talked about is there is a... It's in here somewhere. It's one of these buttons. Why can't I remember? Yeah, there it is. Show yield icons, okay? I like to leave this on because I'm just so used to playing the game with it. But if you press your Y key, you can turn this on and off. And this just lets you sort of see what you're actually going to get from the tiles that you're working. Because sometimes tiles have yields that are implied from other mechanics, like a volcano erupting, that you're not going to be able to tell visually. Like I can tell this is a hill, and if I hover over it, it tells me 2 food, 1 production. I just like to be able to see that information all the time. Now, I could go for and pick up this tribal village, and I think I will, because this could potentially give me a bonus, like astrology. That's pretty cool. Not an ideal bonus to get astrology, because this is find a natural wonder, which is a relatively easy one to do. If you go for a couple of scouts early, you should be able to find a natural wonder, no problem. And I'm actually finding a little bit more information here. If I hover over this tile here, it'll say coast right about here. It'll say coast, and that tells me that this is another ocean and not a lake. And that tells me that I'm potentially on a peninsula. Now, since I know that this goes up towards the north, that it's far more likely that the termination of the peninsula is up this way, i.e. where the peninsula ends and meets the water is over here. It'll probably be some kind of a shape like this. And that in fact, the most important scouting direction for me is to the south with regards to figuring out where the AI is and where I potentially want to forward settle and set up my wall, my border with the AI. And the reverse is true. I know with a high probability that barbarians tend to spawn in the extremes of the map, i.e. the north and the south, and that I'm going to want to maybe move my warrior in that direction. However, I don't have any defensive units up right now, and I haven't seen a barbarian scout. So I'm just going to use my warrior to get a little bit more information about this south area, because there's also some nice desert here that could potentially open up certain wonders for me. We also found another tribal village, which is very cool. Let's talk about movement a little bit. How movement works in Civ 6. It's not like Civ 5. If you're coming from Civ 5, you might be used to, if a unit has movement, it can move. In Civ 5, that's not true. If a unit has movement and the movement cost of that tile is equal to or lower than its movement, the unit can move into that tile. However, if the movement cost is higher, and you can see here, rivers, I believe, if I go to rivers, I think they have, I can't remember off the top of my head, I think it's a 3 movement cost to move across a river without a bridge or anything like that. So if I want to move across this river, I need to have 3 movement. Now the important thing to note is this unit will never have 3 movement without any buffs. So the only way I can cross the river is by having my maximum movement. Because if your unit is at their maximum movement, they can move into any terrain. It'll just use up their entire turn. Let's go ahead and scout to the southeast with our scout. And you can see here that there's not a whole lot of information going on over here. There is a little bit of a fish tile that's within range of the city. If you want to know how far a city can reach. Oh, this is something really, really important, actually. It's kind of a concept. No, I'll talk about that when I'm settling, actually. So I am 1 turn from growing. And there's a little bit of a concept in the game that I haven't actually talked about, and I can't remember if it's still in the game, so we're actually going to test it together. I'm going to go ahead and save this game. And I will call this Arabia Overexplained Turn 7, okay? Because I want to test something here. If we go into the city, we can see here that the city is making 5 production per turn. And the settler will take 15 turns to produce. Okay, I want to be producing a settler right now because I have my scout, but I'm not 2 population, that's the problem. And I was told that cities can actually save 1 turn of production, which means if I choose to put no production in here, I can actually overflow that production to the next turn. So I'll go ahead and use the hotkey Shift and Enter, and that will fully end my turn, like so. I'm actually bumped into Rome. Hi, Rome. That will, like, hitting Shift Enter will fully end your turn, skipping all actions. I'm just going straight to the end. And then I'm going to force this citizen to work this water tile that produces 0 production so that I can go in here and see the settler still costs 15 turns to produce. So what actually happened there is I wasted a turn. I wanted to double check that actually live, and we'll go back and reload that turn. And the reason why I did that is it's really, really important that people tell me things about this game all the time, and when I test them, they turn out to be not true. And that is something that you are going to be coming up against all the time. You always want to be, don't just be taking my word for things, right? I sometimes say things that are wrong. People say wrong things to me all the time. You always want to test what people say. And I constructed a test there that completely proved what they said was wrong. At least that's what it looked like to me. The settler cost 15 production the first turn, and it cost 15 production the second turn. Maybe there's like some hidden mechanic there that makes that not true. But, you know, it's not an exhaustive test, but doing that sort of little bit of testing based on what people tell you. Don't just assume what people say about this game is true, because there's a lot of misconceptions about the game. So rather than waste 5 production, I'm going to go ahead and put it into something else. Now, that something else might be a scout. Maybe it's a monument. I know I want to get a monument at some point, and putting 5 production into it isn't a bad move. I know I want to get a builder at some point. I'm not in a rush to get a builder right now, so I'm not worried about that. And I think I'm going to put... Let me have a look at the scouting information. Yeah, I think I'm going to put 1 more turn into a scout, and then I'll make the decision to switch to a settler next turn, or I might even actually finish this scout. Let's go to the next turn. That's really annoying that Rome stole that tribal village. Do I want to exchange information with Rome's capital? So this is actually an important discussion here. Rome is a very aggressive civ, so I'm going to not give him the information on my capital, because that might bias him towards attacking him. Now, diplomacy is now we did kind of get the information. We know he's to the south, right? Diplomacy is a very important concept in the game. The very first turn that you meet a civ in a game of Civilization 6, you can always send them a delegation because their like or dislike for you has not updated. So I'm going to send him a delegation, and what that will do is it'll give me a +3 relationship boost, which means potentially down the line, I might be able to keep him from attacking me using only diplomacy. He has a -8 first impression of me. I have no idea how the first impression thing works. There's so much misinformation about it. People say it's based on the unit that they meet, but I've had AIs meet my scout and still hate me. It seems to be, like, as far as I can tell, it's just random. If anyone actually has like a link to an article that explains this, because I've looked it up before, I don't understand how the first impressions work. This is something that's always kind of bothered me about the game. But generally, it's going to be negative when you're playing on a high difficulty. So what you want to do is you want to get that delegation in early, because the delegation is forever, essentially. At least until they declare war on you. It's 25 gold, and it gives you a better chance of maintaining a positive relationship with an AI. Now, I know that Rome is to my south. So that means if I want to protect myself from Rome, I want to settle in a southerly direction and then build units and defenses down there. And that also means I want to start thinking about, when I'm settling my next city, where do I want to put my city that gives me defense against him? So for example, generally speaking, you don't want to settle a city with impassable terrain behind it. So if we think of, if I settle a city here, there's a piece of impassable terrain behind my city, i.e., this is the front that I would have with Rome. If Rome was attacking me from the south, his units would come from this direction, and there's impassable terrain behind me. And the reason why you do that is twofold, because that's one less tile that your ranged units can occupy to shoot over the city and defeat his incoming army. And it also means if he actually takes that city, that piece of impassable terrain now works in his favor, making it much harder for me to attack him because I have to funnel through either here or here. So in terms of defensiveness, a really good location for defense is actually on this tile. If I'm settling for defense, right here is good because he can't get around to flank the city. It only has 1 tile that can actually attack the city, and I have 2 tiles that I can position ranged units to shoot over the city and attack his units that are attacking the city. And then there's a 1 tile gap here. So this is actually a very defensive position for me if I wanted to protect myself from invasion. And depending on how concerned I am that Rome might invade me, I might actually settle this city first. Even though it's not very good, it means I can get this city up and running and use it as a defensive buffer against Rome. We found our very first barbarian, and unfortunately my scout got bogged down. I was really hoping that this terrain connected here. My scout got bogged down, and that means I'm very unlikely to get value from my scout, but I'm still going to try. And really what we're doing now is just doing a little bit of ending turn. This pair of so there's definitely so the only place this barbarian scout could have come from is from this northwest area, and the only place this one could have come from is this eastern area. So I'm going to use this warrior to kill this and I'm going to try to push this barbarian scout away from my city. This is really, really important to do in the early game. You want to use your military units to zone control barbarian units, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail here in a second. But basically, barbarian scouts are kind of dumb. They basically just run away from whatever they see. If they see a unit, they tend to run away from it if they have an active barbarian encampment. There's a mega colossal eruption, very interesting, that has wiped out this tile. We'll talk about those eruptions here in a second. So if I don't want my enemy barbarian units to come into Cairo, I want to position a scout between them and Cairo. So you can see here, this guy's route to Cairo is up here. So this guy's kind of in the way, because if he wants to go up this way, he has to enter into my unit's zone of control. Scouts project a zone of control all the way around him, so he's much more incentivized to run downwards and away from my scout. So I'm pushing the scout away from my city and preventing it from actually, causing problems for me. I also want to talk about clearing barb caps, right? So when you're clearing a barb cap, it's much easier to do it if you have the discipline card. What I'm going to do is I'm going to attack this barbarian encampment once, and that will give me a little bit of experience, and it'll take me about 3 turns to heal up, which will be when I have the discipline card, and it'll make my life easier. A single warrior can clear a barb cap, no problem. You just have to do it the right way. Generally speaking, you attack once, you heal a little bit, you plug in discipline, and then you attack twice more, and that should be the kill. It might be 3 times, depending on the defensive terrain. This guy's only in mild defensive terrain. You can see down here, if you look at the combat screen, on his side, it'll say +3 ideal terrain and +6 fortified defense. That just basically means he's in good terrain. And if I heal my guy up and get the discipline card, I'll be able to kill him easily. Now, I got my second scout, and let's have a look at what information I have that'll kind of inform me what I want to do next. Oh, I never talked about my tech choice. I completely forgot to talk about tech choice. Okay, so in almost every game that you're not going for a religion, you want to pick up animal husbandry. Okay, and there's a few reasons why you want to go for animal husbandry. Horses are a very early resource that are revealed, and they give you +1 food, +1 production on the tile that they're on. So what they can do is, typically because they only spawn on flatland, they turn one of these grassland tiles from a 0 profit tile into a 2 profit tile. That is a massive increase, okay? This tile has roughly equivalent value to this tile. Generally speaking, the total number of yields of food and production about equal out, with, most importantly, food in the early game being slightly more valuable. So actually, I would even consider moving my citizen to working this volcano to get the +1 food here, because that means I'll grow a little bit quicker. A little bit of early growth is good. However, if I'm planning on building settlers, growth can kind of lose value, because every time you build a settler, it wipes out a population, which is like, not only are you spending the production on a settler, you're spending the food as well. So that's something to consider as well. So yeah, that's why the horse, that's sort of all tangential to the horse. Unlocking the horse resource, giving me access to more tiles that have high value, right? This is a 3 food, 1 production tile, whereas previously it was a 2 food tile, and now it's just a better tile. And it also reveals, it's actually especially important in plains starts, because plains tiles on their own are just 1 food, 1 production, which is kind of the worst of both worlds. Like, 2 food you can kind of work for because the citizen is at least paying for himself, but in this one you're trading 1 food for 1 production, which is really detrimental early game. However, a plains horse is really great because it's 2 food, 2 production, which is basically like one of these ideal tiles, right? The citizen is paying for himself and getting the maximum possible profit in production at this time in the game. And production is the lifeblood of your empire. So I got 2 scouts, and these 2 scouts should be enough for me to control early barbarians and also get some exploration in. So now I'm feeling comfortable about making my next decision. Now I could go for a monument here, and it's only 8 turns now because I'm working two production tiles. If I go for a monument, it'll unlock a lot of these a lot earlier. If I go for a settler, it'll open up potential for me to settle defensively, or perhaps more economically, settling for land and productivity and stuff like that. And typically what I would do in my games is I would go for a settler here. And the reason why I want to go for a settler here is the concept of, the earlier you build something, the more benefit you get from it, okay? If I build a monument on turn 10, and the game lasts 300 turns, I am getting the benefit of that monument for 290 turns. If I build a monument on turn 100 in a 300 turn game, I'm getting the benefit of a monument for 200 turns, okay? So the earlier you build things, the more benefit you get from them. Settlers and cities in general are things that give you the highest return of investment of anything in the game, okay? If you build a settler extremely early into the game, you get a massive return because that settler produces population, it produces production, it produces gold, it produces science, it produces faith. You can make units out of it. Settlers, generally speaking, early into the game, provide such a high potential return on investment that investing into anything else without a really good reason is really hard. I also wouldn't bother going for a builder here. I don't have mining, so I can't improve these tiles, right? Mining is required to build quarries and required to build mines. Let's see, what else would we do here? Yeah, I think Scout here, I could go for a monument here, and there's a couple of reasons why you would want to, is so that you can get to early Empire really, really early. And that will give you a boost towards building even more settlers. I think I'm going to opt for just going for the settler here. Because I'm relatively safe. Rome is pretty far away. He does have a big military, but I should have some warning to if he attacks me, right? I didn't give him information of where my capital is. So here is... I didn't give him information of where my capital is. So here's a bit of a problem. This guy could potentially be pushed towards my city. So now I need to kill him. Because if he steps up here, it's going to be really, really bad for me. So now I'm going to start attacking him with my scouts. Scouts are your tool for dealing with barbarian scouts in the early game, okay? They're of equivalent strength, and your ones are more intelligent because they're controlled by a player, okay? Use these as like little sticks to push enemy scouts around and prevent them from running. The safest path that this scout has right now is this direction, okay? Because if he goes this way, he gets caught by my zone of control. If he goes this way, he uses up all of his movement and gets attacked by my scout across the river. So I'm basically trying to give the AI a really high value route to run away from me that is away from my city, okay? That's southeast. Like I was saying, my warrior, I'm going to just heal up here until I have the discipline card. And so you can see the barbarian scout ran into the fog of war. So that worked out perfectly for me. I'm going to keep this scout right here. I'm going to heal him up. And now this scout can kind of run on his merry little way and find out more information about this northwestern area for me.
It is not wisdom.
Okay, so we just unlocked Code of Laws. And when you unlock a tech, there'll be like a little pop-up. I just have like a really bad habit of like clicking away from them. But it'll tell you everything you unlocked. So with Code of Laws, we unlock Discipline, Survey, God King, and Urban Planning. And I'm going to talk about each of these cards right now. When should you plug in Discipline? You should plug in Discipline in almost every single situation. You should only plug in Survey in very niche situations. For example, if you're finding a lot of tribal villages, if you're playing a civilization that has really strong recon units and you want to get highly leveled recon units, then plug in Survey. Generally speaking, Discipline is going to be the card that you plug in 95% of the time. There are situations in which I plug in Survey, and it's generally when I don't have any barbarians to kill. So I'm going to plug in Discipline right now. You also have the choice of an economic policy card. Now, there's 4 types of cards in the game. Well, is that right? Yeah, there's generally 4 types of cards. There's military cards, which are red. There's economic cards, which are yellow. There's diplomatic cards that are green. We'll talk about them later. And wild cards, which are purple. Right now, I have the government chiefdom, which gives me 0 diplomatic favor per turn, which is up here, which is used. We'll talk about that a little bit later. It gives me +1 influence per turn. And every 100 influence I get 1 envoy. What is the other one? Yeah, so that's everything. That's everything basically about this government. It has a military policy card and it has an economic policy card. I can plug in God King. This will give me +1 faith and +1 gold. Why would you plug in +1 faith, +1 gold? You plug this in specifically because you want to get a pantheon. Pantheons sort of tie into the religious system. If you want to know more about pantheons, go ahead and click on the Civilopedia here. Type in Pantheon. And that will bring you to this. Faith and religion. Click on pantheons. It'll bring you to the faith and religion screen, and you can kind of learn about pantheons. You're probably better off going over here to the religions button, clicking that, and then if you come down here to pantheons belief, you'll see all of the pantheons in the game. And when you earn 25 faith, I think it is, on standard game speed, you'll be able to pick one of these pantheons. And each of these pantheons can be like a minor bonus to your civ, they can be a major bonus to your civ, or they can be literally game defining. It all depends on your knowledge of the game, how you're planning on playing, what your start location is like, and what civ you're playing. So there's all this information that feeds into how important your pantheon is. One thing it is important to know is that you need a pantheon to found a religion. I'm playing Arabia, I want to found a religion. However, I don't need to rush for a pantheon, okay? I'm going to get a religion at some point this game, so I'm not in a rush to get a pantheon. So I could actually opt to go for urban planning here. There's a little bit of a burden of knowledge here about the pantheon system, because an early pantheon can be huge for a number of reasons. If I go back here, there's a couple of here, if I remember correctly. Is it fertility rights? No, it's religious settlements. If you get a really early pantheon, you can get a free settler. That's huge. Basically, on deity difficulty, the AI, I think, starts with 4 settlers, and you start off with 1. So if you can get an early, like, free settler, that puts you on, like, such good footing in comparison to the AI, because you're a player and you're a little bit more intelligent, and you should be able to play the game better. It'll help you catch up really early. I don't think I'm going to be getting religious settlements this game. If I'm playing Arabia, thinking about what pantheon I want to go for is like a really big decision. And if there's not a really great pantheon here for me, I might just kind of opt to get a later pantheon. And right now, I'm not seeing a pantheon that really stands out to me. God of Craftsman is just generally really good. Let's see. Earth Goddess is pretty okay. I really like Divine Spark in games where I'm going for a science victory supported by a religion, because it gives you +1 great people points. But this is all dependent on infrastructure. And the really important thing about when you're going for a pantheon is you have to ask yourself the question is, how competitive is this pantheon? I.e., how many other people are going to want this pantheon? And how much investment do I need to make for this pantheon? So if, for example, you're going for a pantheon that gives you holy site adjacency, and you're playing a civilization that wants you to get holy sites really early, then getting an early pantheon is really, really important, because it all feeds in together to your game plan. I'm playing Arabia, who doesn't need to go for early holy sites and doesn't need to go for early pantheons, and is going to get a religion, and I don't have to worry about it. So I can actually kind of opt to be like, you know what, I don't need a pantheon, I'm just going to plug in urban planning, get that +1 production per turn, and use that to snowball. So that is kind of the decision there. Generally speaking, you want to plug God King in if you're a civilization who needs an early pantheon and doesn't have a way to get early faith outside of God King. You can also just, like, if you're being lazy and you want to get a pantheon, you can just plug God King in at some point. But I'm going to plug in the extra production because, again, if you remember, by plugging in God King, I've essentially turned my city center, right? If you remember, this gives +1 production in all cities. So let's just imagine that that +1 production applies to the city center. I've essentially turned the city center from being a +3 surplus, because remember, all of the yields from the city center are surplus because you don't require a citizen to work it, to being a +4 surplus, which means I've made my city center about 33% better by plugging that card in. It's pretty good. So yeah. So generally speaking, that would be kind of the logical train of thought that I would go through when I'm picking my early cards for my government, once I get Code of Laws. Now that I have Code of Laws, I have to make a decision about which sort of little branch I want to go down here in the early game. And there's 2 general directions you can go. You can either go for early empire or state workforce, or you can go for one of the sides. These are less common to go for these extreme sides. I would consider going for these if I was going for a heavy tourism religion game, which I'm not going for. And the reason for that is basically mysticism is the sort of tourism religion side, because here is drama and poetry. This is your tourism area. Here's your religion stuff. Now, I will want to go down here, but I'm not in a rush to get here. This is a potential direction for Arabia, but I would argue that the strongest direction for Arabia to go is to get their cities down early. And that's generally going to mean going for colonization. which means you want to go for early empire. Now, something you want to do when you're playing on deity is always make sure that you get craftsmanship. And the reason you always get craftsmanship is because it gives you the Agog card, or Agog card, and that gives you a 50% production bonus towards building units. And since you are always weaker than the AI on deity difficulty in terms of how many units you can produce and how strong your units are, being able to get 50% more units levels the playing field just that little bit. That's going to mean the difference between you dying and you surviving. So if I talk about what I want to do with this warrior, I'm going to attack this scout. And the reason why I'm attacking this scout is because I want to get rid of him. This guy has the potential to spawn an infinite number of barbarians if I don't deal with him. So the threat level posed by a barbarian scout is literally infinite, and you want to get rid of him. Whereas this barb cap, I can deal with this, okay? I could just heal up and I can poke it down and I'll get rid of it eventually. Let's go ahead and continue the scouting to the northwest. I found another barbarian encampment. That's going to require a warrior to deal with. So probably after this settler, I will have to reconsider what I'm going to be going for after this settler in terms of do I want to go for a military unit or something like that. But that's it for this turn. And what this scout will most likely do is it'll run off into the fog of war and then probably run over to my scout where it'll be killed. Okay, so it looks like a blue unit in the fog of war attacked this barbarian, and I'm really hoping that he doesn't kill it so that I can actually get the kill. So what I've done is I've stepped up here onto this hill in order to prevent any more potential units from getting up onto this guy so that I can be the killing blow. We also bumped into Bologna, and I was not the first person to meet Bologna, which really sucks because that would have been +2 science per turn. However, they want an inspiration for early empire. This is their mission for me. And so I just go to my civic tree and I look here. Here's early empire, here's the boost. They want me to grow my civilization to at least 6 population. So that means getting at least 6 population in a city or 6 population spread across multiple cities. Now that's a thing that I can do. So that means there's +2 science per turn just sitting here ready for me to claim once I trigger this. So that's a really good benefit. I'm really hoping there's a tornado here. I'm going to go step on that tornado and I got a free recon unit. This is a bit of a double-edged sword in that I don't need another recon unit, but I can also use it to control barbarians and fog bust and stuff like that. It's not ideal what I would want to get, but I'll live with it. Oh, this is huge actually. That is so lucky. So this barbarian encampment just got hit by that tornado, which means I'm going to be able to clear it with a scout. Which means I get the gold from clearing the barbarian encampment. I get the boost for military tradition for clearing a barbarian encampment. And I get the era score for clearing a barbarian encampment. So that's a ton of benefits I just picked up there from clearing that barbarian encampment, which was just pure luck, essentially. And like I said, this blue warrior attacked the barbarian encampment, and because I stepped up here, I prevented any other potential units maybe stepping up here to try to kill it, and now I can steal this barbarian encampment for myself, get 6 XP, get the promotion, get the gold, and clear another barb camp, and get myself another little bit of era score. If I can get a kill on this scout now as well, I will actually get the boost for bronze working, which is worth potentially, I think it's 40% of the cost of the tech. So if you take 80, multiply it by 0.4, that's roughly speaking 8 times 4 is, oh brain, do math, like 32 science. So that's worth, so if I can kill one more barb unit, that's worth 32 science for me. Okay, so that's really important to be able to keep track of what things here that I could potentially do. All right, let's go to the next turn. So this is actually a really important thing that I want to talk about. The scout, the barbarian scout, decided to attack my scout and get himself killed. I want to talk about why that happened. When you kill a barbarian encampment, any of the scout units that were attached to that barbarian encampment go rogue. They just go berserk, and they basically try to find the nearest thing that they can attack and attack it, because they basically realize that they're dead. And it's probably going to happen with this scout as well. So what I like to do is I always like to make sure my units are like pretty well healed. So I'm going to take some time to heal up here. And I have a decision now to make with this warrior. It has a promotion. Now the question is, I could promote now and heal the unit up and get a promotion, or I could wait. I could just heal naturally and save this promotion for if the unit gets in trouble. I personally really like actually promoting my units, and I want to talk about these two promotion trees. The current choice that I have is Battlecry and Tortoise. Battlecry gives you +7 combat strength versus melee and ranged units. Now this is really important to remember. Melee and ranged units doesn't mean all units that are melee and all units that are ranged. These are specific classes of units. If I come up here and I type in, is it classes? No, there's a way to do this. The simplest way I could do it is probably just clicking on a unit that's melee, right? The Horseman is melee, but it's not a melee class unit. It is a light cavalry class unit, okay? If I click the Hoplite, this is also a melee unit, but it's an anti-cavalry class unit. The Heavy Chariot is a heavy cavalry class unit. Now, the thing that's actually hidden here is that this actually applies to melee, anti-cavalry, and range units. And those are all 3 classes of units. It's kind of mislabeled because it actually works on spearmen as well. At least barbarian spearmen, I know that much. And ranged class, here you go, right? Promotion class ranged. Archers are a ranged class unit, as are, let me see if I can find swordsmen. Swordsmen are a melee class unit, okay? This is, I wish they would rename these to something else because they're a little bit confusing. But basically, this doesn't mean that this unit just does +7 combat strength against every unit in the game. No, it means against those specific classes, melee and range units, and anti-cavalry units. And if you want to know which ones are, you can just like find the lowest level unit of that, which is the warrior. And you can see the warrior upgrades to the swordsman, and then it upgrades to the musketman. And then it upgrades to the infantry. And then it upgrades to the mechanized infantry. So all of those units in this train, warrior, swordsman, musketman, infantry, mechanized infantry, if I take this promotion, this unit will have +7 combat strength against them. And how the combat system works is kind of maybe another thing that I want to talk about. Like if I hover over here, you'll see that I'm getting what's called a minor defeat. That's because if we take the comparative combat strengths of these units, okay, this one is 16 combat strength and this one is 17. And the reason he's 17 is because he's damaged and he has fortified defense and his base combat strength, which means I will actually lose slightly more health than him. If I come in here and plug in the Battlecry promotion, that heals me and gives me the Battlecry promotion, which means I now have a combat strength that is 10 higher than him, which means I'll do a lot more damage to him. So hopefully that explains why I always go for Battlecry, is because the number of units that it applies to on the offense and defense is so far reaching and wide that it makes your warriors way stronger. Tortoise is only good if you're being shot by enemy units. So that's kind of the decision there of why I go for the Battlecry promotion on my warriors. I just really like that promotion. There is pottery, and the reason I'm going for pottery is because I want to get my early campus. I want to get a campus early. However, I have made a little bit of an error here. I want to place my campus here on this stone, and I can't place a campus there until I get masonry, because I need to get masonry in order to harvest stone. So that's something to consider. I'm going to want to get a builder in here and harvest this at some point. And if I want to get masonry, I'm going to want to build a quarry, which is probably going to tell me that I want to place a quarry in here at some point in order to boost masonry in order to harvest this stone. So you can kind of see how decisions start to chain together, right? I want to build a campus right here. There is stone on this tile. I want to get rid of stone, so I need to research masonry. In order to research masonry faster, I need a quarry. I have a quarry here. So I research mining to unlock quarries, I get a builder to harvest this, or to improve this, and then harvest that. So you can see how all these decisions sort of link together in a very neat fashion that tells me what I want to be doing in my game. Unlocking campuses right now wouldn't actually do a whole lot for me, but unlocking mining, maybe it will, because it gets me closer to masonry. Okay, I have my warrior here. Let's do a little bit more scouting. I don't like to move my warrior much more further than this away from my city. And I think I'm going to start moving him back because your warrior is your number one defensive unit in the early game. Used correctly, a warrior can protect you from a lot of crap. So I'm going to be using my warrior pretty judiciously here to defend me. Now, I'm going to be doing something that is generally ill-advised, but it's totally fine for a number of reasons. I'm going to be moving this settler that I just completed on his own out to where I want to settle him. And the reason why that's ill-advised is because settlers are really vulnerable units that are really expensive to produce, and they provide a lot of value if another player captures them. It's totally fine to do this in single player if you understand the risks. I have full vision of this area, which means that nobody can really sneak out and catch me off guard. I have to make a decision about where I'm going to send this settler now. Up here is objectively the best place that I could settle a city, because if you look at these tiles, they all have really good yields, and I would get a lot of value from settling up here. Down here is the best city I could settle in terms of defense, especially since I plan to go for masonry early this game, which means I could get walls up in this city and be very safe from any potential attacks from Rome. Now, speaking of Rome, I'm going to be moving my warrior into a position to sort of scout Rome. I'm going to be sitting on this deer tile. And the reason why I'm going to sit on this deer tile is because it offers me a very easy escape route. It provides me with vision of Rome, or any potential Roman attacks, and then I have one move to the river, one move to cross, or potentially one move to river, one move to cross, and then I'm only a couple of moves away from retreating. And it provides me with the vision I need to make decisions about whether or not Rome is attacking me early. Let's see here. So I think I would really like to get a city settled around here, perhaps on the firs. Now this is a really... No, actually, I wouldn't want to settle on the firs. I would like to settle on this hill right here. And I'll talk about why I want to settle on that hill right here. This hill is right on the edge of my own loyalty, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That means this hill is right on the edge of the loyalty that's coming from my capital. It's also right on the edge of the loyalty coming from Rome right now. There's no negative loyalty for settling here. It's a plains hill next to an extremely high value tile that also gives me a potential access route to the east. This potential access route is really, really important. So I'm probably going to settle here and then backfill here to kind of protect myself. It also is in access to a really good holy site in here, and the tiles in here are just generally really good, and it allows me to secure my border with Rome early into the game and then backfill other cities later on. Cairo has finished a settler, and I'm a little bit worried about Rome. There's a couple of things I need to get my hands on right now, and I think one of them is a builder. And I think getting this early builder is going to pay dividends for me for a very long time, because I'm going to be able to improve this tile with +1 production and also potentially improve these horses. Improving these horses will make them better, as well as give me access to a strategic resource that I can sell to the AI, and then I can use the builder to chop this to go from my campus. So I think a builder right now has an extremely high return on investment. Now, I could actually delay this builder if I wanted to. I don't have to build this builder right now, because builders in the very early game cost 200 gold. 200 gold is a pretty good price for a builder, especially early game. So I could wait another roughly 10 turns and get a builder. So that's also another option that you want to consider. How do you want to use your early gold? Generally speaking, I will buy a builder or a warrior with it. I won't buy these things because the return on investment on these are pretty low in comparison to how quickly these things return on investment, things like settlers, builders, and units, right? If a unit keeps you from dying, it has literally infinite return on investment because you didn't die, right? And dying is, all of your investment goes to zero. So yeah. I think it would be risky to go for another settler here, and I would feel more comfortable getting a unit out here. In particular, I would feel pretty comfortable going for a slinger here. Although, if I just want to get raw combat strength to make it less likely for Rome to declare war on me, then I want to go for a warrior. And I think I will go for 2 warriors here. Just to defend myself. Now, I could go for the builder and improve 3 tiles. However, that would give me craftsmanship, but, well, let's think about this, right? So there's a bit of a risk here that I'm taking. There's kind of a whole bunch of dimensions of an analysis that are going on in my head that I'm going to try to like disentangle and explain to you. I really want warriors to be able to defend myself from Rome. I also want slingers to be able to get archers to defend myself from Rome. I want to get a builder because I was talking about this whole chain to getting to a really good campus in my capital, right? Getting bronze, or getting masonry, getting writing, improving this, and harvesting that, right? But I also want to get craftsmanship, which means I have to improve 3 tiles, which would mean I would need 2 builders to improve 3 tiles and then harvest this to do that whole idea. So I think the compromise here is if I go for a monument and then a builder, I will get a Gog really, really quickly. Sorry, if I go for a monument, a monument and then a builder, I will get a Gog really quickly, and I'll be able to build like 2 or 3 warriors really fast. And I think that's the most efficient way to navigate this. So I'm actually going to go for a monument right now, and then go for a builder. And these will change as the game advances. Now, what I want to do is I want to find more information on Rome while I still have open borders with him. It's a really important idea here, is that at early Empire, let's see here, unlocks the ability to enforce borders and grants open border and grant open borders to other civilizations. Before the AI has that tech researched, you can run in and out of their borders at will, and that'll allow me to gather a lot of information on Rome. Let me go ahead and place a pin for myself to remind myself that this is where I want to settle for now. Rome does not know where my cities are yet. So there is a big risk here settling this city. And I've identified a better place to sit to scout Rome, which is here on this hill, because it's a defensive terrain with floodplains, which makes units in here weaker. And it has a river potential defense from 2 tiles as well, although not necessarily in the vector of attack that would come for this city. And we'll continue to do a little bit of scouting. This guy, what's the fastest way to get to that tile? Okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm going to link my scout and my settler together. Even if it's not like ideal, it allows me to move them sort of like that. So it looks like this is the edge of the Roman Empire so far. I'm going to fortify this warrior here, and I'll keep abreast of any barbarians spawning over here as well. Pop up here. There's some more coastline here. So settling here will potentially open me up to settling this coastline, which will kind of link my city, my empire, around this mountain range via the sea. Rome just researched early empire, and that's just to give you an idea of how far ahead the AI is technologically compared to the player in the early game. He just got early empire. I'm only researching craftsmanship. There's mining, perfect. There's the rest of Rome's empire. Pretty scary stuff. I'm probably going to be running into issues here. So I really want to go for masonry, but I need archery to defend myself. I need archery. If I don't have archery, I cannot hold off Rome. If Rome decides to attack me, and our relationship isn't amazing right now, because they respect empires with a lot of land, he could very easily opt to kill me right now. And there's not a whole lot that I could do. The thing I'm worried about is his warrior is going to be adjacent to my new city. And he's also sending units up to this northern area. Okay. Looks like he has decided to attack somewhere else. I'm also going to keep this scout here as a forward observer to keep an eye on Rome. And I'm going to be settling right here. This is right on the edge of the loyalty problem that I would have with Rome, which is perfect. I just finished the monument, which means I'm getting craftsmanship really quick. So the second that this builder is finished, I'll be able to mass produce units and get them down here pretty quick. There's a Rapa Nui, and they want me to train a galley. You want an inspiration. And okay, so 2 of the city-states that I've met, Antioch, Rapa Nui, and Bologna. Bologna and Antioch want me to get a boost for early empire, which is really good, which means I want to point more in that direction, because getting an envoy with both of these guys would give me +2 science and +4 gold, which is fantastic early game. A little bit worried about this Roman warrior hanging around here. I'm going to go ahead and settle. And now this warrior is going to jump into Damascus as a defensive unit, and I'm going to start producing slingers out of Damascus. Having 2 slingers over here should be, pretty good at defending. And the really nice thing about Damascus is that it's a city that's settled with +6 production from turn 1 of it being settled, right? Because it has 2 production on the city center and 3 production on the firs. This is a great location for a city in terms of being able to be self-sufficient and defend itself. So that's kind of why I made the decision to settle over here, because it also has other really good tiles in range. Generally speaking, I talked about this a little bit earlier, about the whole 2 food, 2 production thing, and like how tiles, you want to look at the surplus tiles. Don't forget that you can kind of transfer surplus from one tile to another. So because this tile here is producing 3 food, that means it has a spare food that I can sort of use as a token to justify working a tile with only 1 food, because I'm still getting that 2 food. And you always want to be paying for your workers. You always want to be paying for the citizens that are working those tiles, right? The citizens cost 2 food. So you always want to be getting 2 food from the tiles they're working on average. And since this one has 3 food, it means I can kind of, if I work both of these tiles, I'm getting 2 food on average, right? And so that will justify me working this tile maybe a little bit earlier than if I only had like these other 2 food tiles to work, right? Because generally speaking, I stick to around a +2 food surplus. Going down to +1 is literally halving, so I try to stay at +2 food surplus or higher. So I don't like to go down to +1 food surplus. So I typically wait until I have a granary to justify working those tiles or something. I'm going to step this guy into Damascus as a defense. This will raise the city's combat strength and hopefully discourage Rome from attacking me. I'm going to bring this scout up to the north to have a better control of this area. In case a barb camp spawns over here, and it's very likely, it's all in the fog of war, and bad things could happen to me. So I'm going to bring this scout up here to defend. Now the really worrying thing that we want to look out for is if Rome's units don't leave. If Rome's units leave, that's great. It means he's not planning to attack me. But I will be keeping this scout here because I'm extremely vulnerable to Rome for the next 70 turns. Roughly speaking, I am going to be getting, like, I am within inches of my life just flashing before my eyes. If I don't catch the Roman invasion before it happens, I'm dead, okay? That's why I have this scout sitting here, just watching the border, because the most likely attack vector is from here, which I could potentially miss, or from here, right? It's probably more likely coming from here because that's where the capital is, right? It's probably going to come up through here. So I just need to catch that attack before it happens, because if I catch it before it happens, I can prepare. That's why I'm going for archery, because the potential of a Roman attack when he has 200 military strength, right? That's like 10 warriors worth of units, is insane. But yeah, I'm going to call that there the end of this episode. Hopefully this has been a really good first 30 turns of explanation, and we'll be doing more as we go on. I love you all very much, and I'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to join my Discord. We've been playing World of Warcraft as a community. Go ahead and jump in if you want to play that game. I think it's on sale now and all that sort of stuff too, so don't be worried about that. I love you all very much, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.